Hi everyone, welcome back to Metanoia. My name is Carrie Jane, and today I'm going to be making a requested video addressing the question, are tarot and oracle cards accurate? Are they accurate in actually reflecting the physical world or our internal states back at us? And just to get started, I'm going to begin with reading the comment that spurred or inspired this video. And so the question is from Dark Knight Silver, and it states, so I got some questions if you do not mind me asking. I am recently getting into tarot, but I am highly skeptical they even work as to being able to show a person's feeling or explain a situation accurately in the real physical world. And to me, that's because, I'm an aqua moon, you explain why you're having skepticism, etc., your personal background with that. You want to know on a scale of 1 to 10 how accurate tarot readings are in showing the actual truth of a person's feeling or a situation in the real world. And then you also want to know my opinion on yes and no cards. So first of all, thank you so much for asking this question. This is a very good question. This is a great topic to discuss, not just with me, obviously, but with anyone that you come across who uses cards. So I highly recommend that you not just ask me, but start a discussion with other people as well. And my dog's freaking out, so bear with me. So I had a really hard time answering your question via comment because my answer is complicated, but also mostly because I actually don't use my decks to accurately reflect the physical world or even my internal state. I use decks, I use tools of divination to help me connect. It's kind of like, going to the gym every so often during the week. It's a means for me to make sure that I'm opening a door, I'm constantly opening a door to have the ability to receive whatever it is that I'm meant to receive at any given moment. It's like a practice in mindfulness. It's a way to check in every day with myself. I think that, it's not something that I use to gain practical information that is going to accurately reflect my day-to-day life. So what I just said is controversial because there are a lot of tarot and oracle card readers who are using the craft in a way to reflect their physical reality. But, hear me out anyway. And I wrote a response down that I'm actually just going to read verbatim because I think it explains it accurately. I wrote here that a deck of cards is limited, and life and people are limitless. The accuracy of a reading comes from the person, not the deck. It's up to the reader to know whether or not this message pertains to something they're feeling, something in their environment, or something else they should accurately be focusing on, despite the fact. A card reading will not always be true to physical reality, but that's not because tarot and oracle aren't accurate. The law of attraction doesn't spontaneously turn on and off. It's because the current is placing a limited thing onto something that has no limitations. We as people and our lives, that has no limitations. That's an infinite thing. And then you take something as limiting as a 78 card deck or a 44 card oracle deck, and you're trying to place that on something that is really infinite in experience. It's just not realistic. It's just not going to do what you want it to do. And I know that the hero's journey in tarot is extremely dynamic. There's tons of things going on, but there's really nothing that you can quantify out of something like this, which is not quantifiable, you know. For example, you know, you pull one card in tarot, it could mean a million different things. And that is because it's up to the current. The reason why tarot is so dynamic is because it requires that person's participation in being able to tune in and know what that card is actually talking about. I hope that made sense. And so that being said, I'm going to read what I wrote after that. That being said, I'd be trying to quantify something that isn't quantifiable by rating accuracy on a scale of 1 to 10, which is what you wanted. I wrote here that as soon as you choose a number, there is a major element to card reading that is excluded based on the fact that we live in a reality and an existence that can't always be pinned down. Our lives here are so dynamic and things are always changing, and if we could quantify every moment and know every turn, this life would be pointless because there'd be no mystery and no means for learning, which is the whole point to Earth. It's the whole point of being here. And so that statement kind of applies more to predictive readings, not necessarily like a present reading, like things of, if you're asking your deck, you know, what's happening right now. The future is always changing. I think that predictions are a real accurate thing, but also who knows what's actually going to happen, because every turn means a different future. But, and here is the huge but, it doesn't mean that sometimes you're going to pull a card and somehow it is extremely black and white and it is describing your physical reality to a T. You know, sometimes it just so happens that that little deck that you're holding is going to reflect something in your physical reality very accurately. And I'm actually going to share a couple of my experiences with that, with both Oracle and Tarot. There was one time, a long time ago, when I was experiencing a lot of frustration in my life. And I was angry and I was tired of things always being the same way. And eventually my frustration just built up to the point where I grabbed my tarot deck and asked it a very, very specific question pertaining to my physical life. I basically wanted to know why I was experiencing what I was experiencing. To be a little bit more specific, I was having trouble with, you know, some medical issue that I was tired of experiencing. I didn't want to have it anymore, and so I wanted to know why I had it. And I don't recommend doing this for anyone. I mean, I guess who am I to say what you should and shouldn't do with your deck? But I don't think it's a good idea to do what I did. And I knew what I was doing when I was doing, but like I said, I was very frustrated and I was tired and I didn't want to have to deal with it anymore. So I grabbed my tarot deck and I was like, why am I having this issue? Why am I like this? What's wrong with me? That was basically the fundamental question there, like, what's wrong with me and why? So I was shuffling and immediately 2 cards flew out of the deck and 2 court cards were the results, which I believe typically are meant to pertain to like either a person in your life or you. And these 2 court cards specifically just extremely accurately described my mom and my dad to a T. especially out of that deck I was using, because I had also read the guidebook of that deck, not just looked up online or anything, but I was reading that deck specifically, and I was like, wow, this one sounds exactly like my mom, and wow, this one sounds exactly like my dad. And what this deck was showing me was like, hey, a woman and a man came together, they made you were a biological accident, and guess what? This just happened. And so that was one of the most accurate readings that I ever got. If you were to limit it to my physical reality, it was very, very straightforward. And I think the reason why it was so straightforward was because I was meant to receive it that way. We're not always meant to receive it that way. We're, in that moment, I was, it was acceptable for me to finally be shown that this issue that you have is not your fault. There's nothing wrong with you. Just sometimes people have children, and those children have genetic defects because of their parents, and this is what you have. So it's just when you are meant to receive a reading that is that black and white, it'll happen for you. And if you did this out of frustration, I completely understand. But like I said, I don't think it's a good idea to be asking your deck these kinds of questions all the time. You will receive the message that you're meant to receive at any given moment, and just accept that. Moving forward, I didn't want to make this video without giving you some sort of concrete, quantifiable answer. And I want to make it an honest one, because, I could try to quantify, I could dissect every year of my life and come to a number or take an average, but it just doesn't feel right to me. Like, it doesn't feel an authentic part of me to do that. It doesn't feel like I would be able to give you an honest answer. But at the same time, I do want to give you something a little bit concrete pertaining to numbers, just to make sure that this video that I'm making is helpful to you, and to anyone watching as well. Anyone who's watching, please feel free to request a video, because I really want to make sure I'm actually making content that you guys want. But anyway, yeah, I still want to make sure that I give you something like that, and I'm going to do that in the form of my Patreon readings. I have been giving Patreon readings based on numerology since January. It's a way to support my channel. And what I do in those readings is I talk about numerology, the state of the world at that time, and then I go into each person there individually. But at the end, I do a card reading, specifically Oracle, although I might do Tarot eventually. But anyway, I do a card reading for each of those. Since we're in October, I've done 10 so far. And I can say, based on that experience, 10 out of 10 times, my card readings have been 100% accurate. And Michelle, Marcy, or Janice, if you're watching this right now, please explain your experiences where you've, had accuracy in my readings, or in your own readings, in your own card readings, etc. But yeah, that's the only thing I can basically quantify out of my experience, because I have, something that is tied to numbers in that way. I've done 10 card readings that are on YouTube right now, that are unlisted, that I could, go through and then, survey all my supporters and, ask them, was this accurate to you? How so? And you could actually do that if you wanted to. If it helps you, run a little experiment. You could just be you, or you could involve other people. You could try a little trial run where you say, okay, I'm going to give 10 readings to these people, and then I'm going to have them fill out a little survey at the end and say how accurate it was for them, explain, what was accurate to them, how it made them feel, etc. And at the end, get a number. You could do that if you really wanted to. How accurately it's going to reflect this spiritual non-material work that we're doing. I'm not certain because, like, it's non-material, and we're trying to apply something material onto it. Will that be accurate? I don't know, but it's worth a try. I understand because I'm mostly air as well, and I am a scientist. My field of work is in the sciences, so I get it, and I often feel like I am personally meant to kind of serve as a mediator between spirituality and science in this way. And what I can say so far is that I really feel like spirituality and science are just two sides of the same coin. They are different methods to explain the same thing. But if you take something like science and its limitations, which it does have, and try to, apply that over to spirituality, which is something that we can't really grasp with numbers all the time, it doesn't always work out in my experience. It's just, we're in science, we're using very specific tools that will quantify, and then we try to take those tools and those measurements, and maybe those tools are not the best tools, if you get what I mean, to try to understand something like spirituality. And that's why I'm really interested in quantum physics, because I feel like this is where we are on the verge of being able to quantify the mystery of this non-material world that we have. But that's another video, so we won't go into that. And last but not least, before this video gets too long, you want to know if I like yes or no cards, and the answer is I don't. I've never liked yes or no cards. I feel like most of the yes and no cards that are out there come from Doreen Virtue decks, and I've worked in places that have sold these Doreen Virtue decks, and I have to say, like, I could never get into her stuff. I couldn't quite put my finger on as to why. And I wanted to know why because I was selling these decks to people, and I wanted to be able to give them like an honest answer as to like my opinion on these things. And it's just something about all of her decks and all of her work just felt very exploitive, like something that fed ego, something that fed whatever they wanted. It's like they weren't approaching the deck in a way to want an honest answer, like they just wanted validation in something, or they wanted confirmation on what they were feeling. That was like my honest observation in working with those kinds of decks, and I didn't like it. I wanted something honest, which is why Tarot was great and why other oracle cards are great and etc. But it's interesting that I had that first impression, seeing as to what Doreen Virtue is now and how she did a complete 180 in her work and ended up saying, hey, actually all that stuff that I believed in is really null. It's just something to think about. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. It's just something to think about. So I just want to wrap up this video with, first of all, thanking you again for taking the time to leave that comments in my videos and taking the time to watch my videos and being engaged with them. I'm really glad that what I'm making is useful to you, specifically Dark Knight Silver and anyone who's watching right now. And I would just want to wrap up this message with saying that I really hope that people use these tools of divination more in the light of trying to develop their inner compass. And it's interesting that I said that and touched my necklace, because it's actually an engraving of a compass. Trying to really develop an intuitive sense of things, rather just wanting the deck to do all the work themselves. And for every single person, that's going to mean something different to you, and I can't tell you how to do that, but that's my recommendation. In actively trying to open that door in my life, I could be, for example, when I was doing one of my patron readings, shuffling a deck, and all of a sudden, a thought comes to me. Or, one time specifically, I smelled geranium for some random reason while I was shuffling, and I mentioned it while I was on camera. I was like, I don't know why, but I smell like rose geranium right now. And it turns out that's one of the patrons was working with flowery oils, and they were using geranium. So it's try not to place limitations on yourself in these ways. You are a limitless person. You're capable of like literally almost anything. Our earth experience unfortunately kind of puts us a little bit in a box, but at the end of the day, we're not in a box. Let's face it. We are eternal things living in an eternal existence. And it's quite an exciting journey. So thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for, requesting videos and asking me questions. Dark Knight Silver, I hope that I answered your question, and if not, just ask another question and maybe I'll answer in the comments or make another video. Who knows? So I hope you're all having a lovely weekend, and I'll see you all soon. Take care.